Hello and welcome once again to The Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going right through the summer. We are not taking any breaks because this is a message you probably aren't getting in the mainstream media, so we ask that you like, comment, subscribe, share this program, and together we can push back against that ever-moving Liberal agenda. And of course, as always, if you can't listen or watch the entire program right this second, download it, listen to it later on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, you name it. It is out there. So, great show lined up for you. I know I say that every single week. We have two amazing guests to talk about national security. We're going to talk about the Arctic. We're going to talk about global affairs and how Canada plays a role in that. So, to chat about that, we have Kerry-Lynne Findlay, the Member of Parliament for South Surrey-WhiteRock in beautiful British Columbia. She's also the critic for national defence. And right beside her, we have Cheryl Gallant, the Member of Parliament for Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. Sorry, I drive through it all the time. You'd think I'd get that right. Thank you, both of you, for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the Arctic, something that is kind of a topic of conversation for many about where Canada stands in terms of securing it. We have trillions of dollars worth of minerals and natural resources up there. We have Russia and China kind of looking in to see where they play a role and what they can do in that region. So does Canada prepared at all to defend, or do we even have an Arctic strategy? I know Stephen Harper had it, but really didn't get picked up after the Liberals took power in 2015.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Prime Minister Harper because he actually made it a priority, went up there every summer, made a point of backing the Franklin expedition, for instance, to show the history there. We also mapped the continental shelf and have laid claim to that. So that focus on the Arctic has completely fallen away under the Liberals, and we are not prepared, frankly. And in a ever-changing and more dangerous world we find ourselves in, particularly since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it is really important more than ever to talk about continental defense and to talk about our Arctic. Most people growing up in Canada, we look at a map and we think goes right up to the North Pole and we think that's all ours. Well, there's some other countries that have some different ideas. China likes all the rare earth minerals up there. Russia itself has definitely been navigating through Northwest Passage, very close to our shores. And we really don't know where Russia's going next or what they're doing. In addition, the capacity of missiles to, even from North Korea now, to go further, to take different trajectories, even coming up from the south, as a recent Chinese missile did, means that we have to upgrade, modernize our early warning systems. Our NORAD modernization is very important. There was an announcement by the government just a few days ago of $4.9 billion going into NORAD modernization, but that's not new money. It's money that was already allocated in the budget, and very lofty promises about another $40 billion over the next 20 years. I don't know about you, Jamie, but I don't know that I'll be in this specific role 15, 20 years from now, and I don't think they know that.
Well, you're in your 20s, so you have lots of time.
Well, I have the time and the energy. It's just that usually in government things change. Besides that, we want to have a Conservative government in, so to make promises in those kind of dollar figures over that kind of time frame is basically meaningless. The United States wants to see more integration, and we should want to see more integration from Canada as well in continental defense, and that means being part of the understanding that these rogue states see us as one target area, and we need to do our part.
Now, Cheryl, you sit on the NATO Parliamentary Friendship Group. You're also a member of the National Defence Committee. You must be looking at this as a whole, wondering where Canada is. Are they able to meet their 2% commitments, something it hasn't done in a while, and it's not getting any better under Justin Trudeau. We're seeing issues with military procurement, and the list goes on.
Yes, we're far below the 2% commitment made in Wales. And even with the percentage of our gross domestic product that we do spend towards defense, it's fudging. The numbers are fudged by the Liberals as well, because they now include the Coast Guard. Other countries include the Coast Guard, but their Coast Guards are armed so they can become involved in a conflict if need be. Ours are not. They're just trying to pad the numbers. As well, now they're including Veterans Affairs. But we've been far below, and we have countries like Lithuania who are now have increased over time to 2.5% and committed. We have Germany who has been sort of under the radar, but they have put forth huge commitments towards their NATO spending as well, defense overall. So yeah, Canada is lagging behind in terms of protecting our Arctic. We have 4 submarines, and we are fortunate to have 1 submarine in the water participating in the security of the world at any point in time. And we need new submarines. We haven't seen any plans actually even calling for proposals. And the submarines we do have cannot go under the Arctic ice. So the deepwater port that Prime Minister Harper started, we've had no updates in Defense Committee, I believe, Kerry-Lynne, that I can recall as to how that is going, if they've even continued to pursue it. So we can't defend our north. We already have the Chinese who have a laboratory in the Arctic, and Russia, Putin has established an ever-growing naval base in his Arctic, supposedly to allow for more commercial traffic. But really, I think we've learned, especially over the past 4 months, you can never take what Putin says at face value.
You also can't rely on our historical position even with our allies. For instance, the AUKUS agreement, we were left totally out of that. One of the reasons is what Cheryl's brought up about we don't have nuclear submarines, and when I questioned the Minister of Global Affairs on that, she seemed to think that nuclear was about nuclear missile capability, not how you power the sub. So we have ministers who don't completely understand what we're talking about. And when you start, as one of the Five Eyes partners historically, when you start being left out of high intelligence briefings, when you start being left out of new agreements, that is problematic for us. And we have been criticized by the Americans for, I think the term was used, freeloading. And, you know, it's about getting our defense spending in line with our Wales commitments in NATO, but it's also about understanding the role we could play and the role we're not playing right now with our very closest allies and for our own national security.
So let's talk about equipment, because if we want to protect our coasts, whichever coast it is, we need the equipment. So choosing a pistol seems to be a problem for the military. We can't seem to get our icebreakers built. We can't seem to get our strategy on subs. I remember, and I'm sure you both did in 2015, fighting the battle on F-35s. And I took a pounding in those debates because the Liberals and NDP said that was a horrible decision. Turns out, not so bad. The Liberals are finally going forward with it, albeit about 6 years too late. But this seems to be an issue within the community itself on how to get equipment quickly into the hands of those that need it.
Sorry, go ahead.
The problem is this government has never taken national security seriously. Kerry-Lynne can expand upon that.
Our procurement system process in Canada is far too politicized. We're criticized by other countries for this. Cheryl mentioned Germany. Germany has suddenly come to the table in a big way and has really made much bigger commitments. But you look at other countries where they made the F-35 decision in a couple of years. We were so severely criticized as a government for being part of the F-35 consortium, and now after 7 years they're back to it. However, they're very big on announcements and very short on implementation. So here we are with a big announcement about F-35s, a major investment. They still haven't signed the contracts. We've been asking, they're saying, well, maybe by the end of the year they'll be done. And yet, we purchased the F-35s, that's the deal in the consortium, at the same price as the U.S. in the year we acquired them. And the minister's now making promises about delivery when we don't even have contracts. So it takes too long. It is too politicized. It's too complicated. We need to do better. The NDP the other day were criticizing us, saying we didn't do any better. That's just not true. We were in Afghanistan, and we had to streamline our procurement during that time to get equipment and kit. This government doesn't even seem to be able to get basic kit, basic uniform kit to a lot of our armed forces. Never mind the big equipment purchases. The procurement minister and committee of the whole basically ended up saying, after being asked on several of these, well, we just sort of wait for the National Defence to tell us what we want, and then we try and get the contracts done. It's a very, would you agree, a very hands-off way to approach procurement and what we need.
Totally dysfunctional.
So we have an issue with procuring equipment. We also have the numbers, I think, getting down to concerning levels in terms of our military readiness, in terms of overall recruitment. I think that's an issue that needs to be worked on as well, that the Liberals, from what I see, aren't putting much effort into.
The troops are demoralized. Their focus on matters more to do with social engineering than getting them the practice they need for exercises in between deployments is really what's turning them off. The young people especially join the military for adventure. Being stuck on base, mopping a floor isn't what they signed up for. They wanted to be a part of contributing to the defense and security of Canada. So it's a huge disappointment that they're not able to participate or have the equipment they need to do the jobs that we ask them to do.
We've just been studying this in the National Defence Committee on recruitment and retention. We're down, depending on different estimates, between 8,000 to 12,000 troops to start with. So we really need to recruit brave and patriotic Canadians, as we always have, into the armed forces. But what are they signing up for exactly? And that's where there's a disconnect. There's something like 150 different jobs you could have in the CAF, but do they advertise those jobs? Do they talk about them? Do they look for the right fit? Our study has shown that they don't use modern recruitment tools, modern human resources tools. They're very slow to get back to people even after they've shown a keen interest. We were also talking again about universality of service, whether that's a help or a hindrance. That's something we've always had. But at least look at modern practices in HR and at least advertise and fully advertise what the opportunities are, or you're just not going to get people signing up.
So all these challenges with procuring equipment, getting soldiers or whatever into the military, and like you said, it could be in a different capacity, what have you. Are other countries around the world talking to us right now in terms of making important decisions? You talked about the submarines. I think we were left out of that conversation at all. Like, there are some pretty important conversations taking place, but it doesn't look like Canada's involved in many of them.
The one thing we are involved in, which was initiated by Prime Minister Harper, was our participation training in Latvia and having a presence in Latvia next door to Russia.
We also had training in Ukraine, and certainly we've had some praise for the fact that the tremendous heartfelt and tough effort that Ukrainians have been put under with Russia's invasion. Part of the reason they've been able to meet the challenges to date is because of earlier training with Canadians. But as far as being left out of conversations, we know we are being left out of conversations, even within the Five Eyes partnership, which is UK, US, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. And that is very concerning. We need to be part of all those conversations. We need to up our capacity and interoperability of our equipment with other allies. I think on NATO, particularly since the invasion in Ukraine, we're definitely at the table. We're definitely seen as a valid NATO partner, but we're still not doing our part. We're still not putting the investments in that we should be, that we pledged to do. And you don't get there by just reallocating already allocated funds or by lapsing spending, which they have done in recent time. You have to be serious, something they haven't been, and we have to be serious about what we can do in the world. We've had, again, the Global Affairs Minister say, well, you know, Canadians are more conveners. Well, that simply isn't true. Yes, we can convene, but we're also fighters. We've showed our mettle. We've showed that we will step up and we will do the hard jobs that need to be done. And that is very insulting to our troops, many who have laid their lives on the line. Even in peacetime, we have naval ships that go out of Esquimalt and all the other naval harbors, and they deploy for 8 and 9 months into the Gulf. It's a sacrifice to those families. It is service above self by those in the military, and we should never forget that by saying we're just conveners. It's insulting.
Well, we'll probably finish on this because I believe we are running out of time. But the Global Affairs Minister under fire, Melanie Joly, for somehow allowing one of her bureaucrats to attend a garden party at the Russian embassy here in Ottawa. Apparently her excuse is they were too busy to read the email sent to her staff and herself regarding that decision. Do they approve? And apparently it got looked at. I don't know if Cheryl, you want to comment on that quickly?
Well, it totally eclipses our goal of keeping Russia in its place and the sacrifices many are making with respect to the restrictions on trade with Russia that have been put in place. Our farmers in particular. Every country every industry in Canada that interfaces with Russia is sacrificing, and yet she couldn't read an email in order to ensure that we bypass that particular Tea Party to demonstrate to Ukraine that yes, we are serious, we are behind you.
And remember, this wasn't just any person who went. It was Deputy Chief of Protocol.
That is true.
So first of all, she made the decision to go. Someone backed that decision. Emails were sent to the appropriate places saying she was going. They said they were busy in LA, I think it was, so they couldn't read them. But how did it even happen in the first place? Russia has a very sophisticated plan. It's a military plan, a food plan, and an energy plan. And they are not stopping their efforts to subjugate Ukraine and its people. And this is something that should never be seen, even have the appearance of being taken lightly. It's a threat to all Western democracies and the stability of the world. How is that not resonating in Global Affairs Canada? Only under this government. I can't imagine it happening under our government.
And nobody in the department said, wait a second, this might be a bad idea.
It sounds implausible, which makes you wonder if others knew. I find it hard to believe the Deputy Chief of Protocol just did it all on her own.
I agree. So I always give the guests the last word, just a couple seconds to give your final thoughts on maybe the state of the nation, where you think Conservatives can take the defense file, what have you. The floor is yours. Kerry-Lynne, do you want to start? We'll start with you. We'll go start with Cheryl.
So, as you may know, we had our NATO Parliamentary Assembly conference in spring recently. And two things struck me. I was speaking to a congressman who was sitting in front of me, and he was talking about how his sons had served in Afghanistan. And I said, oh, the soldiers back home, they call, and when I'm chatting with them, they ask, we gave up a lot. We lost our brothers, our sisters. Was it really worth it? How do I answer these soldiers when they wonder if all that sacrifice that has been made and treasure and blood was worth it? And he said, ma'am, you're only counting the casualties. What we can never calculate are the successes, the people we saved, the people who didn't die. So that was one message I took away. And then we also met with actual members of Parliament who were soldiers on the front lines of Ukraine, but who were allowed to come to this conference. And I said, you know, the people in my riding really would like to be side by side with you after they had trained you, and but still be with you right now to help you through this conflict. And he said, well, will you tell them that every success we have is because of that training? Our successes are your successes.
Well said. Kerry-Lynne.
Well, I think Conservatives have a stalwart history of patriotism and backing our military, and sometimes through very hard times and hard choices we've made as a government too to deploy in times of conflict. In my own riding of South Surrey-WhiteRock, we started a Canadian Walk for Veterans. This is something that's 5 years in now. We have 151 cities participating, and even people walking in Australia and the Netherlands, because we don't interact enough with our military as a Canadian public. Most of the bases have been moved away from urban centres. It's one of the issues with recruitment, is that a lot of people don't understand it, but Conservatives know the sacrifice. We appreciate it, and we want to always be shoulder to shoulder with our serving men and women and our veterans, many of whom come back with unseen injuries that they deal with for a lifetime. So I'm very proud of our commitment, and certainly a Conservative government would take it all seriously, and when we make announcements, we implement them. We don't make big announcements and then kind of figure it out later or maybe let them lapse. We are true to our word, and I would like to see that going forward.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. Kerry-Lynne Findlay, Member of Parliament for South Surrey-WhiteRock and the critic for National Defence, also beside her. Cheryl Gallant, the Member of Parliament for Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. Always a pleasure. Many more questions, short on time, sadly, but we'll get you back again. And we appreciate you joining in. As I said off the top, this is probably a message you're not getting in the mainstream media, so please like, comment, subscribe, share this program. New content every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Download it, listen to it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, you name it, it is out there. As always, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.